Welcome to the Flux Dev Meeting, June 15th, 2023. We have a pretty slim agenda as of right now, but we'll give it a minute and see if people want to add topics to discuss. And if anyone's feeling not too shy, maybe kick us off with whatever it is we're going to talk about first.
I can share a quick note about the security audit process. We have received proposed dates for a technical introduction with the folks who are going to do the audit and actual kickoff date. Let me quickly see what the actual dates were. Review timeline will be from July 24 through August 4, technical onboarding call on June 27, and the kickoff call on July 19th. I'm waiting for Stefan to actually return so that we can kind of discuss and fine-tune what we want them to look at. But the general plan is that they will look at the things that will be GA by then. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Hide. Sanskar, would you like to talk next?
I also have a quick update to share. It's good that Matthias is on the call. So Garrett support is not going to happen because Garrett needs commit message hooks. So the way Garrett basically works is that you don't open PRs based on branches, you open PRs based on commits. And the way you identify a certain set of commits that form one chain set is that they include something called change ID, which is a Git hook. So like the commit message includes the change ID, and we use a library, like we use the GoGit library. So Git hooks are just not possible. So as long as Git hooks are not possible, the change ID won't be inserted. And if the change ID is not going to be inserted, then Garrett won't know that this commit is part of a particular chain set. So we can still go ahead with the PR, which adds arbitrary ref spec support, but that won't unblock Garrett support. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw the update explaining about the usage of the GoGit library and everything in the feature request issue. So your Arian 9600?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, actually there's something I wanted to maybe update in a while. Like I got the buy-in to use GitHub for using Flux. So yeah, I don't really need so much the support for Garrett anymore. So I wondered if like would it have been useful for you guys if I came up if I said this earlier? Maybe I don't know how much effort you put on that feature.
I think it's fine. I think multiple people would have. There was at least one more person active on the issue who commented today. So
yeah, I mean, and also the way the feature of the ref spec itself looks useful, right? It won't work with Garrett, which is fine, at least for me. but like the feature itself still sounds useful. Could still go in, I guess, right? The ref spec.
yeah, I mean, you can push it to a PR, right? You can change the ref spec, or you could build a tool around which wraps the image automation and it changes the ref spec to a certain PR. So then you can push all your commits to PR instead of directly to a branch. It's helpful.
Yeah, cool. I mean, thanks for the effort and sorry for not maybe saying that Gary isn't so important for us anymore earlier.
Yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay, I have a couple of things I could talk about, but they're low priority. If we have anything important, Flux business can go first. My first issue is about the bug scrub that's coming up. It's not really an issue, but we are going to try to incorporate a chat GPT in one of the upcoming bug scrubs. We've also added AEST, more friendly to Australia and perhaps Middle Eastern time zone bug scrub, which is on Tuesday every other week now, if you're in my time zone, or Wednesday if you're in one of those time zones, I think. And I've been building a little toy Kubernetes operator project to help with tracking Flux download stats. I'm going to link that Git repo in the topics just for information, but it has legs. It seems to be working now, and I'm building conditions into it. So I'm using this as an experiment to help me understand Kubernetes programming better. And it's going pretty well. Finding lots of surprising bugs in places where I wasn't expecting to find them. This is something we've also been discussing at the bug scrub. So if you're interested in more detail, you can come visit us there. I see Sunny has another agenda item. Are you prepared to talk about that, or?
Yeah, I want to mention something we discovered in notification controller. We're adding some multiple error aggregation code using the new Go error join feature notification controller. And after adding that, we noticed that the Go fuzz, the fuzzing test fails, and it fails to build, saying it doesn't understand errors that join. And after doing some investigation of why it's happening, because all of our workflows and Docker files have Go 120, found that the base image that we use, OSS fuzz base builder Go, uses Go 119, and the upstream, the Google OSS first project is stuck. It's like they have a lot of projects which use different versions of Go, and all are compatible with Go 119, but somebody tried to update to Go 120, and some of the projects just fail. So they are just waiting for all the projects to update. But some projects that need Go 120, like Crossplane and some other projects, they update their configuration files inline in the OSS fuzz repository. I think we'll also have to do that. And I think we have to do it in our repositories, Flux repositories and OSS fuzz. Have to coordinate somehow to make it work. Is it clear? The problem? Anybody?
I think so.
Okay. I have not created any pull requests. I messaged Paulo about this. We'll see what he thinks about it, because he did all the setup initially. We will have this issue in our other repositories as well as we start using those new features, and the Go fuzz runs against those code. I have one more thing to talk about. Two more things. Notification controller V1 Beta 3 API. Last week we discussed about how do we do migration when we move our alerts and provided to static objects. And I think we're talking about adding some reconciler for removing the finalizers and anything that is old and not relevant in the new API. So I added a new reconciler or two new reconcilers for alert and provider that removes the finalizer from the existing objects, and it will not do any reconciliation for new objects unless they have a finalizer. So only the old objects will be reconciled. None of the new objects will be. And this will be removed in the subsequent release. It's just temporary. Code is there, somebody can review it. I am working on documentation API spec. Should be ready soon. And one last thing. So in all of Flux, we report metrics about each of the CRDs in the reconciler itself. And with the removal of reconcilers from notification controller, we cannot report metrics. So we used to report reconciliation time metrics, and if an object exists or if the object is suspended or resumed in normal state. I think reconciliation metrics we cannot report without reconciler, but the object state can be reported using some other methods, which Flux need not implement. I found that Cube State Metrics has a custom resource metrics, custom resource state metrics feature, where you can configure Cube State Metrics to collect metrics about any custom resource. And you can provide the path to any field in your custom resource that you want to collect metrics about. I think that's the way we should be going for static objects, because running a reconciler just for reporting metrics doesn't seem right. And I was thinking, if you're doing this, why not do it for all the objects? Maybe eventually we can. We can start with notification controller. So the reconcilers will just report the reconciliation time, but all the other metrics can be collected using CubeState metrics. It'll be a Flux global change. Any opinion? I can paste some links about CubeState metrics docs.
I think the cube state metrics is pretty easy or interesting. I need to spend some time to learn how it works. Yeah, I appreciate any links you can share, and we can put them in the notes as well.
Okay, that's it for me. We can have a discussion if anybody has any thoughts.
Hey, so if there are no more topics, I'm thinking about adding one, which is super non-priority, because we could just discuss offline on the pull request itself. But if it's okay, if we have time, if it's the right forum, can we discuss a very minor little technical detail of a pull request that I have? Okay, so it's Sunny. So it's about your request for refactoring the internal client of the Google Pub Sub feature to make it a generic Pub Sub client associated with a project, right? So I just want to understand, like, because the real Pub Sub client, like if I understood correctly, the constructor of the real PubSub client takes the project ID, right? But it also takes the credentials. So once it's created, it's associated via the option package dot client option that takes the credentials. So once the client is constructed, you can't change the identity or the credentials anymore. You can't re-authenticate on that client. You can just use it for the identity that it was created with. And if the identity doesn't have permissions to publish in all the topics of the project, then you can't really consider this client generic enough to work within the scope of the project, right? So that's the reality for the real PubSub client. But in our internal representation, like in our internal abstraction of the code, we could make it truly generic within the scope of a project by passing even the JSON credentials in the parameter of the publish method, you know, such that that would be like what we could like consider truly generic within the scope of a project, right? Because you're just saying that every time you're going to publish, you're also going to create a client there with those credentials. And you're really just storing the project ID on the struct. So
initially, I was thinking, like, do we really need to store the credential? But
so
if we create,
we don't need to store the credentials on our struct, but the real PubSub client constructor takes it. So that's why I'm having this discussion with myself, you know, about
so
how to do it.
looking at the code, client just takes the project ID, and then when you are publishing, then you provide the topic ID and the
It takes
payload.
also the you see the options. That's where the credentials are being passed in the constructor.
So project ID and credentials are being passed when you create the client, not the
Yep.
topic ID or the payload.
Yep.
So I think I was saying pass the topic ID and payload in publish only. So it's
Right.
generic to the
Right.
client project.
The topic, the payload, and the attributes, they cannot be passed as inputs to publish. That's fine. We agree on that. I'm just wondering about the relationship of the credentials with this client that in our abstraction is supposed to be generic enough for you to work within the entire scope of the project. And because the credentials not necessarily give you permissions to do whatever you like, to touch every topic, for example, inside that project, then if we don't also pass the credentials in the publish parameters along with the others, then that client abstraction is not going to be truly generic in the scope of the project. Does that make sense?
I think it's okay because you don't have to pass anything in the credential. In the background, you can go and change the credential scope in the GCP console, right? You can have the same credential, but you can change the permission in the background. You don't have different credential for different topics.
You could, I mean, in my case, for example, I do have a project with multiple topics and multiple service accounts for publishing to those topics, because it's like least privilege principle thing, right? Like, so it's not true that, like, so if you create a PubSub client with a project and also the credentials to actually create the real client, then that's gonna mean like yeah, you could, on the background, you could change the permissions of those credentials to make it have permissions for touching all the topics, but I think you usually don't go that way because it's a bit unsafe.
But it matches with the upstream client. Even they, while creating the client, they just take the credential. They don't take the credential when you're publishing that payload.
Sorry, what?
The upstream client also works in the same way, right? You create clients separately and then you publish separately. You don't, while publishing, you do not take the credential.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So it's the same abstraction. We are not changing anything.
That makes sense. So in that case, what I'm gonna do is the internal struct, it's only gonna store the project ID and the credentials. Everything else, topic ID, payload, and attributes, those three are gonna be passed as inputs to the publish method.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And you can
Cool, that's-
update the test accordingly.
Yeah, that's the only one missing in my list, of course.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks.
Do we have any other topics to add in for today? Well, since I don't hear any volunteers, I think we've reached the end of the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.